Okay, maybe then we'll have a runner take the microphone for the question part. But I'll start off with a question, and it's maybe a bit of a woo-woo question, but about being artists and when you're in the creative process. Do you feel guided? Do you feel guided by ancestors? Do you feel guided by the forces? If it's not too personal and sensitive a question, I'd love to hear more about your creative practice and what goes on.
I find for me, I'm usually not aware of that, which is why when it does happen, it strikes me a lot, like with my mushrooms piece. But I do find it with the drums a bit. I do, like, it's not like every drum this is a specific person, but I definitely am thinking that, like, they're portraits. And I find when I'm sourcing the material, I'm kind of guided by memories, and so, like, certain things jump out at me. And I've had it happen where I'm like, show up at a thrift store and I'm like, I really need to find this particular dress my sister had, and then I'll go into the thrift store and I will find it, which is like this weird 90s fringe one. But I've kind of had that where if, like, I ask for something out loud, I usually will find it. Yeah, so that's been kind of the way that's worked. I don't always in the studio feel that way though.
Mm-hmm. So it's in the practice and during the...
Yeah, for sure. Is that also for you?
Yeah, ditto. But I actually think that it's, I think that is cultivated as a practice amongst creative people, and that we all have that ability to tap into that, which is like you ask for the thing you need and then it comes to you. And part of it is recognizing that it might come in a way that you weren't expecting, but it's coming to you. And so it's really important that we be really clear about what we're asking for. Because, our life on this planet is finite. And, happens. And we never know when that's going to end. And I think part of our work is to learn as much as we can and to kind of transcend our experiences as humans. And I'm doing that through my art, And on the flip side of that is also, when we're guided by these larger questions in our lives, well, those are also answered, but not right away, Sometimes right away, but usually not right away. So it's good to have clear questions.
And I have one more question, then I'll turn it over to the audience. But basically, in both of your practices, I made the observation that you're sort of time traveling, right? You're sort of going back and past in pictures or digging things out of the Thames in London, and then you're bringing it, you're time traveling into the current moment, into new contexts, into new sort of meaning, and sort of your thoughts about sort of this process. I know as Indigenous people that we don't necessarily have this rosy, warm, fuzzy nostalgia about the past, right? It means something different. It's not the good old days, is it? It's very complicated to navigate these things. So in your practice, how do you sort of navigate these sort of different sort of contexts, different times for different audiences? How do you think about these things?
For me, I have really actually loved going into the archives. Like, I love going. I was at the Alberta and the City of Edmonton ones, and I loved it. And it was hard. Like, things are labeled really strangely. I found images of, like, my great-grandmother, and it just said Métis family, but it, like, had no name, and I was like, she wasn't Métis. And it's just this weird, like, erasure that you really have to dig through. But I really loved seeing the images. There were so many I wanted to use too, and I'm like, is this my family? I don't know. Like, it was really hard, and there's so many images I wanted to use, and I'm like, I don't know if I have the permission to use them. But working that way has been really great. Like I said, like, having conversations with my mom or my aunties and things has really taught me a lot, that I think if I didn't have these images in front of me, it wouldn't spark something in them to talk about people in a certain way, or it brings something up for them. So that has been really great. But also, and I don't really talk about this in a way because it does sound kind of woo-woo, but when I'm making the pieces and I'm making those rips, there's this part of like where they're rips and I haven't done anything to them yet, and then I start the mending of them where I'm looking at them and I feel like they're portals. Like, but it's not something I think about in like a way I would write about the work or it's in my artist or something, but that's what it feels like to me when I'm working on them in a way that is not in any of my other works or in my practice. But there's something about working with those images and those materials and these holes where that's always the thought, and it's not something, you know, I grew up knowing about or like hearing about, but it's just, that's what it feels like it is to me.
Living in time. Yeah, I think I'm thinking about the question, and I mean, part of it is kind of speaking to recovery, right? But I also think that like an amazing part of it is like, as Indigenous people, that's just how we always were. You know, if I think of the teachings around wampum and how, you know, those are kind of understandings that are built, they're kind of like, they're built by the people who were present. So, you know, in Haudenosaunee culture, I'm not Haudenosaunee, but I know that, you know, the great law is actually a week-long event or a 10-day-long event where each part is kind of like added on. And so that history is always kind of carried, or even when we talk about who our family is and our lineage, that history is always invoked, right? As people, before we arrive to the here and the now of what we're doing here and now together. So that's kind of where I try and situate the practice. But the archival record has been incredibly important to me as someone who's been divorced from all of that. I try not to like get sunk into it too much, you know? Because as much as I'm trying to identify, I'm also not trying to like hold on to the pain. I'm trying to release that. So it's kind of like a dance.
Thank you. Yeah, it reminds me of the term living ancestors, which is a term I heard recently and just blew me away. I mean, just sort of this idea of all the people before you and all the people after you, and sort of the convergence of. But this is very woo-woo, but this is where my mind goes personally. So we'll open up to audience questions. If somebody from our tech team doesn't mind taking this microphone and running it back and forth between the audience. Oh, you have a microphone. Okay, cool. So we'll keep ours. You have yours. Any questions for Michelle or Nadia? Just put up your hand if you have. Oh, there's a question over there.
First of all, Kukshon, thank you so much for your presentations. I think one of the things I'm very curious about as sort of an Indigenous artist and writer myself is what was sort of your pathway or experience in first having your work publicly displayed?
For me, I think my very first experiences were with school. I went to SFU and there was a gallery on campus and doing that kind of thing. And then after that, I was basically in group shows a lot. I would apply or be invited to be in group shows, and like I said, it wasn't until very recently that I had a full body of work that I felt I could start to apply for solo shows. Because I would look at a gallery and be like, I could fill half the space. So that took me a long time to be able to be like, okay, I think I've got enough and I can start to apply. And then I would just, you know, sometimes go to gallery websites. Daphne was super new and just started applying everywhere, and it was, for me, really great because the response was really great. I think I had 5 solo shows in that first year, and you know, I had none before that. Thank you, Daphne. So just, yeah, I was just checking websites a lot, like, I don't know if it comes out here, but like BC Alliance for Arts and stuff like that, and checking who had calls for group shows mostly, and then checking the individual gallery sites where I was like, I love that gallery, I would love to show there, and then seeing what their submission process was, and then just always having a file ready to go.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I think definitely school. My first shows happened around school. I went to Camosun College and we had a show, yeah, for 2 years. And had a show at, I don't remember what the name of the gallery was, but anyway, a long time ago. And then again, Emily Carr for a couple of years, and had, you know, always kind of showing my work, especially in group shows at the time. I was part of a touring show called Wild Woman Review with Janet Rogers and Kathy Weary and Gina Ambers, and then did my master's, and you know, built a body of work that I was able then to show. And yeah, there's lots of, I mean, in Canada we're especially privileged to have so many artist-run centers. So there's lots and lots, you know, and there's a whole kind of directory of all the artist-run centers in each of the provinces, and I think that that's a pretty good way to start, and looking at what the submission process is, but yeah.
Any more questions from the audience? Yaya?
So I guess my question is, both of you work in archive or work in some way, shape, or form, and especially with your images, and you working with actual artifacts from the Thames River. There's almost like this well, maybe not unspoken, you guys spoke very beautifully to it, but like there's unspoken like grief when working with archives. It's like, especially if you cannot even see those pieces within the museums, it's like, how do you even navigate that, especially like with family images or pieces, and it's like, it's there, but it's like, it's not there, there's like a distance in between there. So how do you guys navigate that as an artist? Like, how do you, your thoughts and feelings?
I think for me, I was unprepared for that. I was just thinking, I'm just going to go in there and see what they have, kind of thing. And then I was doing a project, and they had said, if you need to talk to an elder, or if you need like a, I don't know what the full name was, like a grief person, and I was like shocked that, one, this was being offered, that they thought I was going to need, and I was like, no, I'll be fine. And then later I was like, no, I totally should have done that. I was surprised by it. So I'm hoping when I go back to Alberta this summer, providing I can, that, you know, that's something that I take advantage of properly. Like I said, I was unprepared for that. And yeah, I think when you're in there and you're dealing with these, I haven't worked with materials. I've worked strictly with photographs, and going through the photographs and just constantly seeing all the, you know, everything misnamed or just unknown Indian, or, you know, all those things where it's not even a location, or all that is kind of, I wasn't not expected to be upset by it. I just, you know, thought, well, of course it's like that. I've seen it like that. But seeing so many where it's like one photographer and his whole archive is like 100 photos, and that's all it says. Like, there's nothing, like, we weren't even worth listing. We weren't, you know, he didn't need to learn our names or where he was or anything. So that was really unexpectedly upsetting to me. So I think it's something, if you have the opportunity to do that, to be like aware of it, and also if like supports are offered, then definitely take advantage of them. I was like, I'm fine, and I wasn't.
I don't know that I've had that experience of diving through family records of photographs. But I'd like to think that I'm pretty resilient, you know? And when I say that, I mean like all my experiences have kind of created a pretty thick skin. And so in one way, if I approach it from lots of, I had a really great teacher, actually, Panook, Daniel Smith, who's from Kirianzibi and a master woodworker and canoe builder. And one of the works I made a really long time ago was to create a half aluminum, half birch bark canoe. And I'd gone to a kind of a summer course up in Serpent River when I was teaching around there one year, and learned with a bunch of people, and then realized that I couldn't do it by myself still. So I went back to my community and met my great-grandfather, offered him a drum. And he told me about Panook, and I hunted down Panook, and Panook and I have been good friends. And one of the things that I always loved about Panook is, you know, he'll say, I'm not a traditional person, but all he's making are traditional things. And the way he thinks about it is, and so this was a really good teaching for me, which is like, I like to think, what were they doing back then? And what would they have been using? And why would they have been using this? So thinking about it from the material, from the use, from, you know, what was available. And then we all know this, but like, I mean, substitutions happen all the time, you know, right? We're building canoes, and then all of a sudden, well, I don't know, maybe that year we couldn't dig for roots, so we started using nails. Or maybe the bears weren't around, so we started using tar. Like, but all of those things, it's like, that to me speaks to a resilient and kind of adaptable people, the people who are still here. And so I don't carry the grief, because it's not useful. You know, it really isn't. Not, you know, I think it's good to name it, and it's good to recognize it, but I think it's better to, I really love what you're doing and honoring it, you know, and seeing it for what it is, but not letting it be attached to you, because then how could you, it just becomes complicated to live in there. We want to live in joy, right?
Karen, do you think we have time for one more question, or? Yeah. All right, any last questions? Way in the back there. Here comes the microphone.
Sigali, kind of similar to the last question, that both of your works work with stories and materials that are coming from like a history that's like part of a collective, either a family or community or even like a land. How do you navigate the pressure of like both honoring the creative, your creative process, but also honoring the stories themselves and making sure like the pressure of like, you know, we looking at these stories and retelling them in your way. Dokni.
I find for me, because you know, a lot of the recent work has my family in it. And originally when I was in undergrad, my work was about my family a lot. And I was kind of constantly being told not to do that. Like, no one will understand this, and no one will relate to this. And do you make art for two people? No, you don't. So make it like broader. And then once I was out of school, I was like, but this is what I want to do. Like, this is where I find, you know, that's where I want to draw my stories from, is my own family. I'm going to talk for all Cree people. Like, I'm not going to. I barely speak for my whole family. And so just dealing with that, and then working with the images and stories of my family. And I mean, I don't feel like I really have to get permission from them, but I do talk to them about it. And there were some images I wasn't sure if like my cousins would get mad at me or something, or someone would be like, that's my photo, you stole that off Facebook or something. But I was like, you posted it on the internet, it's free use now. So just kind of dealing with that and just working with my family and my stories and my community in a way that like I want to, like, I don't know if that's making sense, but like I don't feel like I need to ask permission and be like, can I use these images? Can I tell this story? And some of it's kind of hidden. I don't say everything about it. I don't say everything in the image, and I don't tell everyone's story. Is kind of how I've dealt with, like, the only people I would expect pushback from is maybe like my cousins or something, and they have not. They love it. So that's where I'm at with that now.
Yeah, that's a great question. I have so many things to say to that question. I don't even know where to begin. I mean, the first part is like trust. To me, it's trust that the thing that you want to communicate is going to be useful and received by others. But that's not to say that everything I'm going to communicate is going to be on that level. So, sometimes, I mean, the thing about art that's fascinating is you could have two different pieces and have two different people see both of them, and one will totally laugh at one piece and totally cry at the other, and vice versa. So you don't know exactly how you're going to touch people, but that you are going to touch people, I think, is the trust. And then the second is like, well, the conversation's always changing. The conversation is always moving. We're always kind of like rethinking these things, And I think 20 years ago, like, what did it mean to be in community isn't the same conversation as what it means to be in community now. And so there's also kind of like being, like trusting that the work that you're doing is adaptable to that conversation, but also kind of helping that conversation grow. And then, like, yeah, we're all human too, so I think, well, at least I don't know about you guys, but I'm still a human. And like being okay to make mistakes, failure. Like, I like to show some of the pieces I didn't create, that I thought about, that I still carry with me, because failure is a learning, and we're here to learn, and that's also important, and that's also okay. So, yeah, I hope I answered that question okay. Got a thumbs up, okay.
All right, I think that's it for today, hey?
I just want to offer thanks again, Cooksjam, Cookstakuch. We all thank you for being here. That's in my language, Sufamachjin, and here a lot of Insilchjin folks will say Lim Limt. I wanted to just share very briefly, while we're on the stage with these images in the background, that the one we're seeing for UBC Okanagan Gallery here, an Indigenous art intensive, with the Insilchjin word Stamia, is by artist Chisetqua. And the word used in the artwork, stamia, is the Insilchjin word that is literally meaning dough buck, and is one of the names the Ilch use for specific non-binary, indigiqueer, indigitrans, two-spirit, or in-between folks. UBC Okanagan Gallery and the Indigenous Art Intensive share Chisetqua's artwork to promote inclusivity and Indigenous decolonial practices. And the artist, Chisetqua, emphasizes the Ilch specificity of the concept and word, and that it doesn't give people permission to use it. It is her artwork, and it's a Ilch concept, but I wanted to share that background because we're seeing her artwork that was commissioned this year. And Chisetqua, she, her, and also goes by Stamia for pronouns, is a multi-gifted artist with her roots in the Ilch, Okanagan, and Secwepemc Shuswap nations, holding the respect of being a Squai, mother to sons, Stamia, two-spirit, and a traditional knowledge keeper. She mainly works in ceremony, mental health, wellness, storytelling, performance, art, song, poetry, writing, painting, illustration, and most recently murals. And Chisetko will join us later during the intensive. And so, yes, I really want to thank our guests for today, to thank all of you for coming and witnessing and sharing in the beautiful offerings that we had, such generous talks. And join us next Wednesday for another set of talks. Please come, the talks are open, available for all of you. I did want to also acknowledge our guest faculty, Troy Sebastian in the back, and we have a number of courses running. My studio course, Troy's creative writing course, and Stacy's art history course, as well as Evan Habkirk, who is teaching in the Indigenous Studies course. So thank you all for joining us. Please come to Michelle's opening on Friday. And the workshop on Sunday. So we have lots of jam-packed events, so thank you all for being here.